Welcome to another episode of Data Analytics Chat. I'm Ben Parker, a data recruiter and podcast host looking to share knowledge and insights with the data community. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Joe Bugajski, former Chief Data Officer at Gartner. In today's episode, we'll explore his career journey, pivotal moments that shaped his career path, and a discussion around coaching your data team. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ben. It's my pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. It's a pleasure to have you on it. So I guess, do you want to start with sharing your career journey with the listeners?
But of course, so when I started my career, I had an idea in my head that I formed back a long time before that, before I started the career when I was in my teens, and that was I really wanted to understand how we see, hear, or find patterns in information. How do we come from reading something or hearing something or smelling something or communicating with someone? How do we understand what's going on? That's been a thread that went through my entire career. And I started back in the day at in Ford product engineering. I was director of automotive prototyping for Ford back many years ago. This is in ancient times. I built the Taurus Sable, the most successful vehicle that Ford had ever had at the time. Uh, Beyond that, as the prototype, the head of the organization that built prototypes. After that, I spent some time as an organization development consultant, then moved on to building my own company because I had gotten to the point where I think I had an understanding of some machine learning principles that I could apply to data to have the machine understand what that meant. And I decided early in my career to go this route through the commercial sector, primarily because I didn't think academia was for me. I thought the right way to do things, and I bring this up at this point because when I started Triada, the company that I formed with machine learning, I very much wanted to see if we could actually make some of these ideas work. To have the proof not be a publication, but the proof be a product that folks could use. And then from that, I moved on. I sold that company, moved on to that was back in .com, at the end of the .com era, by the way. Then I became the chief data officer at Visa. I was the second one in the world and Visa's first chief data officer. I was responsible for all the data and analytics at Visa. And of course, then I moved on to a different situation that was at Gartner, where I very much wanted to teach others what I had learned throughout my career and how to manage and approach data science, data management, data analysis, machine learning, AI. I'm a mathematician by training, and so to me, there's always been a way to enhance the business that I've been in, the businesses that I've been in, to enhance those businesses through finding patterns in the data and then commercializing it.
Brilliant. And an interesting journey. So I guess you've gone into leadership. When was the sort of moment you thought, yeah, I can move into leadership? Because obviously you've been an expert in your uh, specialism. When's the moment like you've got the confidence, the readiness to make that move?
I would say early on, probably you could say instead of confidence, arrogance, maybe hubris. So, as a young engineer, thinking that I could conquer the world uh, with my skills and knowledge, I proceeded fairly quickly into management. At Ford, it was I found that I needed to form a team in order to do the things that I was trying to do for the organization. In building prototypes, I showed my boss that if I had a team built in a certain way, that we could get the information that we needed to produce the prototypes that were most useful to product engineers. Product engineers in automotive companies and elsewhere have a unique situation where they have to be able to test things that are realistic with respect to their products, and to do that before they exist, and to have a platform on which those tests are real. And this is something I learned back when I studied physics as well. And I learned back when I was studying physics that, yeah, I really have to spend some time in understanding these things, and then to form the team that you can trust to help you carry the idea forward. So it was very early that, within a couple of years of getting started in my career, that I moved into management, and I advanced from that point on. And I think it was because I like to think big. I like to think, how can I change the way we do things wherever I am? Take the risks that go along with that. And
Yes.
for that, I was rewarded with career advancement, and it kept moving up to higher and higher levels, which is fun. It's fun. I enjoy people development. I enjoy leadership. I was a manager for over 50 years. So, very early in, that means I started when I was a kid. It, and that hence the use of the term hubris or arrogance. I think I could have been a better manager earlier had I waited a bit. So, but but I had a mission. I wanted to accomplish something that hadn't been done before, and to do that, I needed a team, and so I built a team.
Brilliant. Interesting to hear. So was it how did you get into leadership then? Also, you just formed a team, or I mean, did you get training? How did it progress? How did you progress? Because I guess there's a lot of people obviously this come to the point where they want to move into leadership, but they're either lacking the right mentor, leadership, training, or just that guess that risk that just go for it.
Well, there's that. There is that, go for it, but it also is, you have to care about others. You have to care about the shape of the organization. And in my case, it was, I had a big vision. I wanted to build this at Ford, where I started when I rose to an executive level. I wanted to be able to build an organization that could build prototype vehicles on a large scale, because we needed it at that time. And I don't want to get into all those details, but we needed it. And it was very clear that without it, we're wasting tons of money, tons of time, and having huge quality problems. So by making this transformation into uh, management, I was able to convince others that I had the vision of where we needed to go in order to improve the organization, that I learned how to communicate that vision. This is back through college and high school, learning how to express myself well, and to give public presentations, and to understand and explain complex ideas to others. And I'm hoping I'm doing that for you here in this podcast, Ben, to the best of my ability. But it's really about sharing the vision and helping folks who want to come along on that vision to succeed. And then looking at them as the people that they are, and forming the team in the same way you would in any good sports event. You want to form a good baseball team, and I'm a baseball fan, and played ball in high school and college, but at a fairly junior level, not anything close to professional. But nonetheless, you have to form a team of folks together. You have to work together, each one contributing our skills and know-how. But generally, you have a captain or a leader who can inspire the team to move forward. And that's always been what I love doing. Does that make
Brilliant.
sense?
Yeah, no, that's good. So you must have been had good communication skills at a fairly young age to get especially to get buy-in and obviously, I guess, negotiation early in your career. Then,
True. Yes, you had the negotiating part was to be able to convince executives that it was worth a shot. So the very first time when I was forming the organization, the first thing that happened was I needed to be able to create the vision and communicate it to the executive team. Moreover, I had to explain why I needed to have a team in the first place because, oh, by the way, teams cost money. And organizations want to know that there's a business relevance to this expenditure that we're going to have, whether you're hiring new folks or moving folks from other places in the organization into your team. That they have to see that there's value likely to be created. So you have to take the risk to make a commitment to deliver, that you can transform an idea into something real that the business wants and needs in order to make money. That's the hard part. And that training comes through just doing well in your studies, early in your studies, learning to talk to others about things. It's hard, and then also taking advantage of, if I was very fortunate in having worked at Ford when it was a very big organization. It's shrunk a bit since I was there, but it was a very big organization with amazing training resources freely available to anybody who worked there. Any engineer or technician could log in and, well, it wasn't a login system, but to get a hold of the training that was available for free to anybody who wanted it. So if you needed to learn how to do negotiations, there was a course for that. If you wanted to learn how to grow a team and manage that team, there were courses for that. And all you had to do was take the time to go do them. So, so yes, education's critical. You learn some of that in college. You can learn some. You learn a lot more of it in your organization. And having been fortunate to have worked in an organization where they made that freely available, it helped my career a lot because I was able to take those lessons forward and understand, apply them, and accept feedback from others in learning how do I improve, both from the folks who work for me and from my management peers and of course my supervisors. So feedback is critical along that journey, and you really want to think about how you can develop yourself and others in ways that are most beneficial for both the person and the organization. And it's a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. And, doesn't mean that there aren't problems, but because anytime you're working in any organization, like a friend of mine said many years ago, Roy, he was chief scientist at Equifax. He told me that Joe, people are messy, right? We're all messy. We are people. We have our own brains. We have our own ways of thinking. In order to move together to create something that is complex and worthy of a market's attention, we have to work together. Otherwise, we just simply will not succeed. We'll produce.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think you brought up some great points there. I think training is so important, but I guess
Yeah,
where the difficulty is now, isn't it? Obviously, you've got the training on, well, depending on what stage you are, you need the training on the technical side, but then it's a lot of it is on the soft skills, isn't it? Like the negotiation. It's there's so much leadership. Like you're dealing with people, how to deal with, be more empathetic. There's so much to do, isn't there?
that is so true, Ben. What one really needs to step back and say, how well am I communicating? What effect are my communications having? Am I moving towards the goals that I've set? Have I communicated them effectively? Uh, and it never stops. It never stops in terms of improvements. Never stop improving. You always have to keep going and looking at how can I do better. And especially for those of us in technical careers, because we know we've got to dive deep. We really do. In order to build great software, things as complicated as machine learning or AI, we have to dive very deep. We have to understand a lot about what that stuff does when you're developing it in its early stages, in particular for kernels for those products. You have to dive very deep. So it's easy to get lost in the technology. Or if you're building a data warehouse at a, it's an old thought nowadays, but nonetheless still valuable, or a data lake, you need to dive deep into how those technologies work, what to do, and you tend to forget that while you're having fun doing that, you have to step back and go find out, am I delivering value along the way? Am I doing small things that provide incremental value to the organization that I serve? And the only way to know that is to ask. Is to say, okay, marketing, your marketing colleague, how, how did I do? Did this help with your campaign? Did it help with
Uh,
your promotion? If it's your production machinery, did that machinery, do you have better throughput? Do you have capabilities to develop products that you didn't have before? I mean, when we're applying these complex um, technical skills, we really do need to understand incrementally how the value that we're delivering every step of the way. If we do that, we're also think about what we're doing. We're communicating. We're always asking questions. We're seeking to understand, and we're all getting feedback that tells us we're on the right path. No, we're not on the right path, and we can make adjustments. And it actually makes the job a lot more interesting than just going down the road and building something that no one will ever use, which sadly happens more often than we really want to see. And it's something that us technologists have to pay attention to. We're building something for a reason. If it's the private sector, public sector, commercials, organizations, there's a reason to build what we're building. And if we can't show incrementally how we're doing delivering value, then something's wrong because we're not free. And none of us, I think, work for free. We tend to want to get paid. So if we're getting paid and we're consuming compute resources and we're using the skills of others, then that costs money, and that means the organization needs to have some value from that. And
yeah,
this
and
is
I think it's quite easy to think you're doing a good job when, because at the end of the day, wherever you communicate, you know what you're talking about, but it's then is the other person able to articulate what you're saying? So sometimes I think you need to obviously have that then reviews to think, oh, actually, I could have put it a bit more in a simpler terms. Like you said, people are busy nowadays. They've got a million and one jobs. And you need to just say in the simplest terms to just so people can understand it and then deliver.
very true, very true. And if you're trying to explain it, like, as I would say to oftentimes to folks when I was at Gartner and I was talking with our clients, I would remind them that if we're going to walk into, as I did one day, walked into the uh, head of marketing for Visa. Was when I was chief data officer there. And Visa marketing, if you've seen Visa advertisements, or you see them in the World Cup, or you see the signs Visa along the uh, backboards in a hockey game, no matter what you're doing, there's Visa. That's a very prestigious job to be the chief marketing officer for an organization such as Visa. That's the high end of where one would strive to go if you're a marketing expert. I am not. I'm terrible at marketing. But I went to talk to the head of marketing one time about the things that we were doing so I could determine whether or not we were doing what they really needed. And I mentioned metadata, and he said, Joe, I don't know what you're talking about. So I said, "Oh, right. Back up, Joe. Stop talking tech. Start talking business." Rather than say that, what I would needed to talk to him about, and what I then changed to, was how the software was enhancing our customers' ability to target their products to the markets that they were serving. Because Visa serves banks by delivering cards and card payment systems, right? And through those banks to many of us who are using plastic, or whether we're using our phones, doesn't matter which, but we're using the payment system in order to accomplish something very simple: buy a product, pay for gasoline at the pump. Those kinds of things are routed through Visa networks as well as others, and it's all data. There's every single bit of it is data. There's nothing but data going through there. And so being the chief data officer, I should know better than to talk to the head of marketing about, metadata or something silly like that, but rather talk to the head of marketing about how Visa is doing a better job in providing support for the banks that provide that sell Visa cards and use the Visa network and pay for that Visa network. Those are the folks that he had to impress, right? So, and he didn't want to hear anything about data or whatever. And Visa had a lot of data. That's a river of data that flows, the never-ending flow of data from around the world. It was a lot of fun. That was a fun job.
Yeah.
But it taught it's that level of improving your skill at communicating, and it takes a long time, and I wasn't good at it until I went out trying to sell my own product, my own machine learning product when I was with Triata. Then I finally understood I've got to change how I talk. So early on in my career, I wasn't as good. I, I could communicate the vision. I could communicate what I was trying to do to product engineering, but without talking about data flows or machine learning or all the other things that we were doing in the background. Right? I could just talk about the product because I had actually been building prototype vehicles. Once I got out of that, I had to learn to explain to someone in an entirely different industry how software or other things that we're trying to do, especially machine learning and AI, how it would help them without talking about machine learning and AI in particulars. That's something I love to do, but it's not something that helps the sale.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's again noticing where you're at in your career. I think being self-aware is a yeah, massive skill to have. Because in my opinion, probably a lot of people don't really probably do a review of themselves.
True,
So
true.
if you're so self-aware about where you are, and being blunt, everyone wants to be special, but end day, if you want to be constantly be a high performer, top of the class, whatever you want to call it, you need to be blunt with yourself and say, look, I actually, even little tweaks, it don't have to be massive changes, does it? It just can be a little tweak. And then it can be a sort of just impact your career.
Exactly. Oh, that is so true, Ben. It was important to understand that feedback, to accept that you screw up, right? Maintain your vision. Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to do? What is it you're trying to deliver? Don't give up on that. But but do accept feedback about, am I making any sense? Ben, am I making sense to you? Right? You're asking me a question. Am I making sense to you? Am I what you're saying going too far in one direction or another? That's feedback I need right here, right now. And it, having learn to have a thick skin. I mean, one of the fortunate things too about starting with a high performance culture in a product engineering organization, building 100,000 cars a year, right? At Ford taught you to have a thick skin. you know, the folks were very quick with feedback, whether you liked it or not, and we needed to pay attention to it and understand that it wasn't necessarily directed at the person. It's directed at improving the capability of the team and improving the communications among the team, so that when you're expressing ourselves well, but also learning to take responsibility for our behaviors and how they affect others. And that goes for whether if you're a leader, you have to understand from your people how you're doing. You have to understand from your peers how you're interacting with them. You have to understand, and I know I said that before, but you have to accept feedback from your management. All of that's valuable, but you have to seek it out too. You have to
Yeah.
ask friends. Ask friends, am I making sense? Just those kinds of things, especially those of us in the technical world. And this is the people we're talking to today. So we need to understand that we can get so deep into what we're doing, and so technical that it becomes very difficult for anyone else to understand what we do. And developing the skill to be able to talk to others so that they do understand what we're doing, so that they understand its value to them, is the hard part. It's something that you start learning, hopefully, if you've taken some public speaking courses in college, which I highly recommend to students that I mentor. uh, Always seek out those opportunities. Seek out opportunities in volunteer organizations. Get feedback. Learn how to take it, and without comment. Learn how to take it and without explaining yourself. Just take the feedback, move on, and improve. And understand all of us have, we're all messy. We're people. We all learn. And the only way we learn is by having a mirror back to ourselves, and that's through others, not hearing ourselves talking.
Yep, no, I agree. So then, if moving on to the next question, then, I mean, were there key moments that shaped your career journey?
No, I would say back to there were several along the way. When I at one point in my career at Ford, so I was there for 13 years. I built, I don't know, 11,000, 12,000 prototype vehicles during that period. My team did, of course. But as I learned, I was supposed to say that I did it because I was responsible. And if it was wrong, it was going to be my neck on the line. But what I had the opportunity one time to figure out how to improve engineering itself, and in particular powertrain engineering. So engine engineering, transmission engineering, drivetrain engineering. How can engineering do better? Because there were too many errors that were showing up in production. Quality had suffered, and it's not a secret. It had that had happened with the all the auto companies, and Ford was no different. And every single one of us had to learn from Deming how to improve. But one of the earliest one was how to improve product engineering. So I had a chance to look at that and to think about how is information exchanged through an engineering organization, such that an idea of a car becomes a car, an idea of a truck becomes a truck. And it's a very interesting, and it was a transforming moment in the sense that it led me to understand information flows and pattern recognition, and how in communications we come to understand something. We don't understand something simply by looking at it. We understand something by interacting and then sharing that knowledge with others. It's kind of de rigueur in the scientific principles to go through and share your results and accept feedback. And so, as engineers, we had to learn to do that in a more methodical way. I was able to trace that and map it. That led me to the work that I did in pattern recognition with my company Triada, and to build, I've got a number of patents on pattern recognition capabilities that come directly from learning how to transform information into a machine's um, internals, so you can actually represent that information and those patterns and detect them inside machines. And there's a lot known about that these days that we don't need to get into. But for me, this was a long time ago. This is for many of our listeners will not have been born because I'm retired, but I still do pattern recognition technology. I still build those models, mathematical models, just for fun. So I continue to advance that discipline and to work on it. I don't do the software anymore. My sons help me with that. They're professional software engineers, unlike me. I'm a professional mathematician. Uh, but nonetheless, that transformation led me to build a business of my own. And we were reasonably successful, but the most important thing is the technology endures, and it really did contribute a little bit of understanding in the grand scheme of things. It's piece of the puzzle that we contributed, and and that that was a huge change for me. When I sold that company, I then wanted to continue on the path, and I was recruited into Visa as their resident entrepreneur, which fit with what I'd just been doing because I was head of my own software company. We had grown to about 100 people, uh, and it's a great company. We got slammed with Y2K and um, and and uh, and some other problems, so it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. But we did sell it to the investors. I moved on to Visa, and they then were looking for someone to head up data and analytics for Visa Global. And I walked over and presented myself to the executive vice president responsible for that search, and said, "Why are you looking elsewhere when you have me?" This is kind of hubris that you do come forward with. But at that point, I would say it's born of confidence. By that point, I understood data from every angle I could possibly understand it, from the basis of machines, um, all the way up to huge collections of data. And as I've said, Visa has a river of data running through that network, and so running its being responsible globally for its data and analytics was quite the capstone. From there, I had met Professor Richard Wang from MIT. Um, he uh, he was doing a review of organizations that were working on data and analytics, and he came over to Visa, and we had a great meeting. And he said, "You know what you're doing is your CDO, you're a chief data officer," and I was called the data czar at the time, and then got the title after I heard from Professor Wang that is what should be the title should be. From that, I then went on to Gartner. It was those steps from product engineering, understanding information flows, how do you transform an idea of a vehicle into a vehicle, and into how do we now represent that in a compute environment by taking information and then transforming that information with algorithms that can spot patterns and then make sense of those patterns and produce something useful in return for the organizations that use the products that were built on top of that. Going on to Visa to say, okay, now how do we manage the data that we have in a much more reliable and fluid way, so that we could achieve the results that I knew we could achieve in where we saved billions of dollars and produced actually several $1 billion of new revenue at Visa. And then I went on to Gartner to teach others to do precisely that. And hopefully in this podcast, we have an opportunity to do a little more of that teaching, which is, you know, it's a big idea. You take these key moments, you don't let go of them, recognize them, shape them, understand them, try something out, fail, then try again, and then fail, and then try again. Um, Pick yourself up, understand failure is normal. Success is there and it's fleeting. Building an organization and building your business is hard, and it's emotionally draining, but it's rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding things we can do because we hopefully are serving others in that process, as well as enhancing the value for the folks that work there.
Yeah, no, I love it because one simple moment is took you on a whole new career journey, and it's just shows if you obviously notice your key strengths and then maximize that, and then that obviously, like you said, you've got the confidence to look. While you're looking for a chief data officer, you hire me, and then
Yes.
you build your strengths, don't you? It's like you're confident in yourself, and then obviously then that portrays to other people, and then they progress. You need to have that trust, don't you? You need to build trust for people to actually think, oh, actually, look, Joe can deliver this. Let's
True.
go.
True, and you prove that over and over again with small things, right? And then as CDO, I had to prove that, okay, I knew what I was doing. I had to go to the head of risk and explain to a guy named Brian at the time. that he was the chief risk officer. I had to explain how it was that the data that they were using needed improvement in order to support the business in finding fraud. Um, and and I showed him a couple of very simple examples, and I went on to having to show, so proving with just little tiny steps, proving with small amounts of work. We talk about that in um, in modern software engineering as building a Scrum, building a minimally viable product. That's still true, and it remains true. We don't build the great big giant thing and then hope for the best. We build the pieces, and we make sure each piece is reliable and useful and is doing something. It may be small, and it may be only those around us in engineering that understand it, but still we ask others in our engineering meetings, in our scrums, do you see it? Is it making sense to you? Am I on the right path? Always seek that feedback. And the more you do of that, the greater your confidence is that you're on the right path. Still, you could end up building something and it collapses, but oh well, I mean, I think in there, Elon Musk has shown that quite well, excuse me, with Starship, right? He blows them up, and unplanned disassembly. That's that's that blows up. Why? Because there's no way to make a rocket do what he wants it to do as fast as he could do it without failures. And I think those kinds of examples. They are in the past in rocket engineering, but they're right before us now with Starship if we pay attention. And we have to think about that in the context of we're not building a rocket ship, but we may be building a product that is going to, let's say, there's products that do fraud recognition. Well, you do want to catch the bad guys. You don't want them to succeed. In order to do that, you build complex models. How do we test those models? We test it by actually using real world situations. Similarly, for improving markets or helping others, I've used examples in healthcare where we're building software that goes inside of an MRI machine, and we want to be able to detect very subtle changes, and have those subtle changes represented in a way that a medical professional will be able to see them and get value from them. They're not for us; they're for the medical professional who can interpret them. And if we don't understand that, if we don't have good communications with others on that, we don't succeed. I know I kind of maybe I'm overbearing on that, but it is the key to success in a career.
Mm. Yeah,
And like
yeah.
you
And
said,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. You touched on sort of failure there. So, have you faced a major sort of career setback or failure, whatever you want to call it?
But of course, you can. Yeah, one does not learn without trying, right? And let's put it this way: so setbacks are normal. It will happen. And if you're not, a long time ago, I learned a lesson from a colleague, manager at way back at Ford, early in my career. And he said, Joe, if I'm going to be fired, I'm going to be fired because I did something. I'm not going to be fired because I did nothing. To me, it's like that crystallized. Okay, if I'm gonna have to try to do this, and oftentimes I won't know the results, and I could get in trouble, right? Because if you've taken something forward and it fails and you've wasted money, guess what? Folks won't like it, and so you got to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for if you're a manager. The setbacks are sometimes you have to lay off folks. You may just have built a team, but now comes along the CFO who says, now you're gonna have to cut back because we're hitting a dry spell and our market's going down on us. We're gonna have to
Mm.
cut back our costs. Those are hard lessons, right? Um, and I had that happen at Ford with a quality study that I did, that senior management simply did not accept it. they simply did not accept it. They said, "Oh, I don't want to hear from you. Go hide in a," So I got banished for a while. But while I was banished, I spent time learning how engineering worked better. I spent more time. Was like, great. I got time on my hands. I'm going to go learn more. Um, what Visa, when it was transformed into a public company, they didn't want the CDO anymore. They didn't want the international one. So I was basically, I could see the writing on the wall. My biggest supporter was were the supporters at Visa were the CEO and the CFO. They were both strong supporters. First, the CEO, because of the change in the nature of visas as a company. So this is way beyond my. This is at the board of directors' decision and how the
Mm.
company was going to be transformed. They did not hire the then CEO of Visa International to be the head of the new entity. They hired somebody else. That was one strike. Second strike was the CFO didn't get the job after of being the CFO, and that was my other strong supporter. It was very clear to me that the end was near. So, so I said, okay, now we're going to have to do something else, and and I asked around. Okay, so what can we do now? Well, this CDO thing that we built at Visa, very successful. We accomplished a lot. We learned a lot, and my team learned a lot doing it. And others have gone. They've gone on to be CDOs elsewhere. And I had an opportunity, just a friend of mine came along and said, how would you like to work at a organization such as Gartner? And I said, I don't know. What would I have to do? He said, will you be an analyst? And it's like, I'm not an analyst, I'm a manager. It's like, yeah, but people learn from analysts. I said, okay, I've never been an analyst. I'll try that. And of course, that lasted for a year or two, and then I was a manager because I saw a vision of how I could build a data and analytics organization and grow it into a large part of Gartner's business, which I did. Um, so the setbacks, they're normal, and they feel like crap. They feel like getting kicked in the stomach by a horse. It really hurts. So, You know, Get used to it. It's gonna hurt. Take a break. Talk to your spouse. Talk to your friend. Talk to your partner. Talk to Talk it out. Go yell and scream. Hit a punching bag. Don't go crazy. Um, when I left Ford, it was I was they offered me a career art placement, and the head of HR from a company, a very large organization, was my teacher, and he taught me. He said to, Joe, when you're at the level you're at, you have to learn to punch a punching bag and scream. Because you're gonna fail. You're gonna people aren't gonna believe you. You're gonna try something, and it's going to drive you nuts. So, so to all of us who are listening, understand that if you're going to make progress, you will make mistakes. You will sometimes get in trouble, and it will be painful. Well, guess what? Doesn't mean you were wrong to try. It means that you just made it, something went wrong. Okay, what? Step back, relax, take a breath, go scream, you know, just do some
Yeah.
do something healthy, work out, swim a mile, whatever your thing is, take care of your body, make sure it's functioning, go back at it.
Yeah. Or just join a boxing gym, then you got you take
Yeah,
your anger out.
actually, yeah, literally, you can take out a lot of aggression on a punching bag, right? You can take out your aggression on a stair stepper. Stay on that for a half hour. They'll wear you out. You know, it's just these are the things we have to do. Have a hobby. Right. We all need hobbies. Do something completely different. One of my hobbies is singing. So I sing with Santa Clara Chorale. It's a hobby. I'm very fortunate to be able to sing with such an organization. The music is very difficult, so I learn a lot. But I don't have to. I'm not the boss. Don't want to be the boss. Don't want to know everything about music. Just want to sing and do what the director says to do, and do it to the best of my ability. So I consider myself a hack compared to the professionals that are in that choir. I am. I am a hack, but I make my noise, and I hope that it's pleasing. so, so that's a hobby, right? Those kinds of things are important to have that hobby, to have that extra thing, to understand what's important in that in your career is really what you're doing for yourself, your family, your friends, and your community. And that transcends organization you're working in, the nutty boss you've got, or any of those kinds of problems. And you will have setbacks. You're going to get fired, or you're going to be demoted, or you're going to get things are going to happen, right? You're going to lose your project, whatever. So what? It's going to hurt. It's going to be miserable. Understand that what's important is from those. Learn from those. Those are the big opportunities to learn, and then move on, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think, yeah, obviously you need to have setbacks as it sort of, in my opinion, it readjusts your where you're at, and then you can learn and grow from there.
True. Very true. Very true. But they
So,
do hurt.
what skills or traits do you think have helped you stand out in the industry?
So for me, it's always been big vision. I, I go into an organization, or I go in and I take a good hard look around what needs doing. How can I make this place a whole lot better? I don't want to do just little things. I want to do something big. And having that big vision of what I could do is what has carried me forward in each and every job, because that's that is in fact oftentimes what companies are lacking. So if you have that ability, not everyone has it, I guess, but I think we can learn from others who do, and we can follow those who do. I have found it important in my career to follow someone else in their career, because they had the vision to how to do the business better than it was, to how to build the technology more robustly than it is, and to listen to that person and then decide, I'm going to follow and learn from this person. And at that point, you can also be the person who is driving that. You learn, then you do your part. You learn. You're capable then of doing more. The others, I would say, are I'm consider myself a decent mathematician. I'm very good at it. I know what I'm doing. In my specialties are geometrodynamics, which is a cross between mathematics and physics. It's what general relativity is based on. I'm very good at probability theory. Those to me, that has driven me along a path that has always been important to me, because that's why I build machine learning models, for instance. We each have one of those skills that we were taught, that we enjoy, that we can become passionate about. Those of us in technology have the unique opportunity to latch on to one of those kinds of things. What is it that's the most exciting thing that we have learned or can do that keeps us going day to day? And for me, it's mathematics, and how I can apply it and how I can use it commercially. That to me, that's how I stood out. By that was very different thought than others had in each of the organizations I've served. But then again, also persistence. Know that you're going to have setbacks. Know that you're going to have to keep explaining yourself. Know that you have to improve. Know that we're going to have to work through others. Learn how to, not how to motivate, because I don't believe in motivation. I believe in being able to communicate well, such that others want to contribute to your success, such that you can contribute to their success. If you don't get the win-win, you're not going to either be a good manager or a good colleague. And then, of course, I became better and better and better at understanding data. Everything that there is to know about data, I've tried to learn it. I can't say I've learned it all, because there's much more to learn. but but certainly, those foundations: mathematics, data, persistence, understanding, and then creating a big vision that others can follow. Those are the ones that stood out. Also got me into trouble, but as I said, if you don't get into trouble, you're probably not doing it right.
Yeah, uh, yeah, I think it's end day, you want to keep learning. I think my whole thing is if you need
Yeah,
to, because that's you're pushing yourself.
right.
Um, And I think that's the best way to be, because you don't want to get complacent in the day, in my opinion, because then you stop growing. I think that's where you come to that impacts just sort of the mentality of yourself, because every person wants to keep progressing, in my opinion, well, should be aiming to keep progressing, because once you sort of get hit a level, it's yeah, you either you're going down, like you're not improving, in my opinion, and that's just where it negatively affects people.
That is so true, Ben. And Ben, what are you doing? You're continuing to learn. You do podcasts like this. You learn from others, don't you?
Yeah,
Moreover,
exactly. Talking is the best thing. Talking to people. People have to talk.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why I do this, because they people listening here will take snippets and they can apply it to their careers, their career journey. So everyone needs to be learning, like especially in data. I mean, look, the goalposts keep changing.
yes, it does, doesn't it? That's well said. Yeah, you think you know where it is, and then somebody come up with something else like, "Whoa, what's that?" How does that work, and how can I use that? And absolutely right, and and we're at as I would tell those who I mentor, and I'm hoping those who are listening understand that that's the beauty of being in this particular field at this point in time on planet Earth, is that we're just starting. We've just begun this journey. There is so much more that's going to go happen, and so many more things we're going to learn. We have, and those of us who are into understanding data science, understanding AI, understanding the machine learning, understanding how to build things in software to trial them and make them better. Those of us who have that are just at the cusp of a major way that is not anywhere near done. It's it's just started. It's hard to express just how vast the opportunity really is,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It's
you
I mean,
need
if
we need
everyone
to
wants to get into data now, obviously it's the trend. But yeah, I mean, it reminds me like software development 15 years ago. Everyone wanted to get into that field. I mean, even the software field now is evolving into data. It's all progression, isn't it? It's all evolving.
true,
And like, there's so much to be touched. Because even though we said before, isn't it? Like businesses don't even really touch the actual data. What do they do? How do you do it? Like, it's still businesses are still looking at how to do that.
true, very true. And look at what we've seen with AI. I mean, Gen AI. We're taking data. Some of that data is code, right? Code that others have written, right, over the years. Code that can be put into the models so that the AI can generate more code. I mean, that's data, right? It's the intersection of data and software engineering, and understanding how that works and its capabilities and how to improve it is going to be very, 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 very important to all of us in our careers. Because we don't get our heads wrapped around that, we're going to find that there are others that'll take our place because they move faster than we did, or we're going to find that there are models that will be trained right out of. So to stay on top of it, we have to understand the capabilities that the software has, which together with the data that's available to it, and the kinds of things like prompt engineering. How do you cause the thing to produce a result that's useful? Those are tough questions, and we need, as data scientists, we need to understand that, and to work on it.
Yeah. And so I like, obviously, the latter part of your career you spent coaching and helping businesses. So I guess, what role should like chief data officers and other C-level leaders play in shaping the data and AI readiness of their teams?
I think the key idea there is that there's value in this stuff that it will help. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, it's appropriate to experiment, to to understand what capabilities uh, are available to us with the machine learning models that we have access to without running new things. But understanding too that each of our businesses, and this is where when a CDO, well, I think a CDO really comes in, CIOs as well, is understanding in our own businesses, where's our data? Because it's our data in our business that matters in building the models. We want to be able to have models that reflect what our business does. We don't need we can use models of what other businesses have done that are similar. We can use that to understand and advance our business. But we also, if we want to build models that do the work of our business, then we have to understand where our data is in the first place. And the one thing that I learned after many, many, many years is one of my sons taught me when he asked the question, "What is it that I learned after 13 years of advising corporations around and governments around the world when I was at Gartner about their data and analytics? What did I learn from that?" And I said, "I learned that we still don't know where our data is and how to manage it." It's surprising. It's hard because it is not too surprising because computer systems are built up over time. We all built different things. We didn't build just one data warehouse. We built 35 or 40 of them. We didn't build just one server. We built thousands of them. So guess where the data is? It's on those spinning disks in memory and all the rest of the tape and other places that we have stored things over the years. And that data it has to be brought together and has to be used in a consistent way in order to benefit the business that created that data, so that the models that we're going to build reflect what that business is actually going to do. And CDOs need to understand that, and they need to understand how far advanced are they. And I've talked to CDOs who, I'm not sorry, but C-level leaders and not CDOs in this case, who are actually starting with paper records. So keep in mind, there's still those kinds of things. Not only that, but there are paper records of things that were built 100 years ago. And there are companies that do work that have machines that were built 100 years ago, and they're still running because they live in mines deep under the earth. And they can't get the machine back out, so they have to repair it. So they build parts for it. It's an amazing business. Or think about life insurance companies. Life expectancy is still pretty good, pretty decent, I would say. But it's long, and policies might start very, very, very early in someone's life and have to be continued. We have to manage that data as leaders. We have to manage that data, and we have to manage it in a way makes it useful and accessible, but also at the same time explainable, understandable, protected, secure, and certainly not leaking out all sorts of stuff that shouldn't be leaked out. So I would say that we have to learn to shape our data and shape our understanding of analytics so that the business apps that we're building are useful. But by the same token, we have to know what the data is that underlies those things and whether or not those apps are producing something useful. And the only way to do that is to run trial projects. And that's CDOs, CIOs, chief operating officers, all those of us, everyone in the C level has to know that though this stuff is exciting, excuse me, although this stuff is very exciting, it does require work. It does require training. It does require understanding. And that understanding comes from the folks that know the parts of the business that we're trying to improve with the data and the machine learning models. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
no, I think it also takes a lot of work, is it, from both the tech and business.
Yes.
You
Yes.
need to get everyone involved and everyone on the same page.
Very true. And yeah, that goes back to engaging one another, right? And talking to CDO has to talk to the head of marketing, has to talk to the head of risk, I'm talking about financial industry organization, has to talk to the head of wealth management, has to talk to the head of commercial banking, right? You have to know these folks. You have to know the presidents of the units. You have to know what their issues are, what they're trying to do, what their goals are, their goals in order to build their part of the business, so that the organization produces value for the shareholders. The same is true in every type of business, or if it's public service, it's how do we improve the services that we deliver? How do we shape them and make them more useful? How we reduce? We'll never eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, but we need to reduce it. It and that inform and The information to do that comes from the data, and it comes from the models that we build to train on that data so we can see where things have gone wrong, how it can be improved. Some of that will be systemic, some of it will be tactical, little issues that need to be just tweaked. Some will be in the software, some will be it'll be all sorts of problems. But it's the but the CDOs need to carry the water on that one to the other leaders, and understanding what they're trying to do, and then shape the the applications and the data so that it's serving those goals, the strategic goals of the organization, not our individual goals, but rather in that
Yeah.
case, the strategic goals. And that comes through running trials and failing, and then running again, and then succeeding, and knowing which ones worked and which ones didn't.
Yeah. No, I agree. So then, what sort of skills and capabilities should staff develop today to support these new wave of initiatives?
Well, it's still there's some old ones and some new ones. I think it's very important to if you don't have the experience with machine learning and AI, go get it. Right? There's a lot of information out there that you can read. There are courses that we can take. There's societies such as IEEE or ACM that will teach it to us. We need that. We need those things. Those are not only that we can go to conferences in this area. We need to really, really up our game, or we'll find ourselves being left behind. So the most important thing each of us as data scientists and machine learning specialists need to do is continue to advance our knowledge and understanding. Know what these models are, how they work. Understand they're not magic. They follow mathematical principles. They're mostly understandable. I'd say the interior of a of a multi-layer deep neural network is hardly understandable, but there are good explanations for it these days that you can follow that will teach us how to do things. That's critical for us individually. For for moving on, it also understanding data management basics. We've got data still everywhere. It's all over the place. We need to understand how we can improve that. That's a never-ending battle because yet another division is so a company is acquisitive, buys another company. Guess what they bring? A whole lot of new systems of data that has to be integrated. We have to get better and better at that. And I think there are things that many of us could do to improve that and make that easier. And that goes back to learning how to manage data in its most basic form. Uh, we all need the skill of understanding business value. And as I said, business value calculation isn't limited to a commercial organization. If you're in a government services organization, is the citizens, are they getting more out of the bucks that they're spending on you, and the work that you're doing on the machines that you're running? Are those citizens finding better ways to do things? Can they make life easier? Does the economy improve? There are things that each can do. Is healthcare improving? Are our patient outcomes better? There are lots of things that we need to think about in terms of getting out of our own space and into that of the others, and that never ends. That continues throughout our careers. And then finally, I think many of us, including myself, can keep learning to present our arguments better. One of the reasons I joined Gartner as an analyst was to write better. I spent a
Uh-huh.
career writing, and I said, but I'm not good enough. And so I joined an organization where professional editors who are far better at writing than me, that understand the nuances of the construction of language, taught me so much. And the practice I had both at writing writing documents as well as talking about them to others, presenting them in public, and then learning from that experience. It was amazing how much I could learn, and I still think of myself as not anywhere near as good as some of my friends, like Frank Faltendike, who's a master presenter and author. Um, it's just brilliant stuff that can be done. We can all do better.
Yeah, no, I think it's obviously, yeah, and it's. Well, I think the big problem, isn't it? It's making time. Everyone's got busy lives,
True,
but you do need to just
but you
get
could do it.
organised or whatever. Whatever you've got, you just need to find time, or even put in your work schedule. Because in the day, it is self improvement. It will improve your work. It's
Take
just doing a little in there. It's like at the minute I'm learning Spanish. It's obviously I'm not fluent, but it's you need to do little bits. Or if you have all like a week off, or you just forget it all, and it's starting again. So you sort of going backwards. When really, if you keep doing little bits every day, you're going to progress.
That's exactly right. I couldn't agree more than and try things. Just go ahead and try things. Do tiny amounts, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But read listen to the podcast. Listen to this one. Listen to others. Read a document about the background of an algorithm that you're working on. Learn from others. Listen to what they have to say about it. Uh, don't forget that you can also continue learning by presenting, by standing up and presenting. Volunteer to present to management your idea or your project. And a lot of us want to go hide in the corner because we'd rather just go do our technical thing. But we can learn a lot by just practicing, right? To be a professional in this business means to practice all the time. And as you just said, Ben, you set that time aside because we are, if we believe ourselves to be professionals, then we practice what we do. We are professionals, right? And that means to practice. We profess something and we practice it. But profess it means we have to argue it. We have to understand it. We have to know it. But also we have to keep in touch with others and learn of the advancements in our career. It's the fun part of this is that, and of course it moves very, very quickly, and we will fall behind. We will have a new baby, and new baby comes along, and that's going to occupy a lot of our time. I remember that back in the day. Even being a grandpa now, with my
Mm.
sons, a couple of my sons have new babies. It's taking up a lot of their time. So there's
Yeah,
less time for learning, but they both continue to try. They've learned that lesson. They're old enough in their careers that they've learned that lesson and they continue. They don't have as much time, but they do have time. Um, these are the things that this is life, and
yeah,
um, and it's the joy of learning that we try to build into what we're doing. If we keep our brains active, it's like keeping our bodies active. That's the one we didn't talk about, Ben, is that we spend a lot of time in chairs. We should get up and go work out. No,
yeah,
that also helps our brains. The Spartans in ancient Greece taught us that lesson, right? It's mind and body. So it's you can't do one without the other.
yeah. No, I agree. So then, obviously, there's a lot of talk about obviously AI taking jobs. So how can executives build a culture that encourages experimentation and learning?
Well, first they have to understand it themselves, and many executives don't. They believe the hype. That's not uncommon. That's where we come in as leaders in data and analytics, as data scientists, as CDOs. It's our job to temper that enthusiasm with a bit of a reality check, and it can be done in ways that are non-threatening. When the chief says, the CEO says, "Okay, hey, I just want to, just heard, my board is on my case about what are we doing with ChatGPT or what are we doing with whatever Google calls their thing." And it used to be Gemini. I don't know if they still call it that, but these all these companies that are building these models. What are we doing with them? Have an answer, and say yes, we've got it. We're trying. we've done this experiment for marketing. We've done this experiment for product engineering. We've done this experiment for production. We've done this experiment for finance. Um, that means you have to go do that. Um, so it is up to us to try for a few easy wins, to learn from our our peers, try for understand where we might be able to, and then go try it, and then we can then help those executives understand what it really takes to be successful, because the current models can go off the rails very quickly, and especially if you're being recursive in your questioning of those models. Try it sometime. You just end up with the same thing, same nonsense over and over again. Um, it's we need to be able to show that in simple, easy ways. It's the same lessons that we've had all along, but we've got to actually be more diligent, I think, Ben. I think we need to pay attention more carefully, because this is a big change that we're experiencing right now. And
Mhm.
jobs will be gone. Jobs that used to exist can be replaced, but we have to build those up. We have to build the models up, and we have to make sure that they do the things that we want to do. And then we have to understand, in our culture, that when we experiment, we will fail, and that failing is how we learn.
Mhm.
But the risks have to be measured. We don't just go off and do something really dumb. I know there was one organization that, believe it or not, went off and built a whole new system, and I won't say what because it would be too embarrassing, to the tune of about $2 or $3 billion, and the whole thing was junk. It didn't work because
Mhm.
they never built it with the business. And so they built something that no one could use. That is really easy to do with with Gen AI. Long time ago, when I remember when we first had some printers, and we had to pay attention to what the drivers were doing. Printers are very good at wasting paper, putting one single character on each page. If you make a mistake in writing a driver, for instance, you understand that. And people still have to write drivers, of course. Um, the same thing is true now, but on a bigger scale, is that you can produce some things that are absolute nonsense, that don't do anything useful for the organization. And then you've taken too big of a risk. So you try for those easy wins. You work with your organization as an executive. You encourage that experimentation, but at a manageable scale, that understand that there are risks, but there are risks that are too expensive. $2 billion, probably too much for most organizations. A few $100s, a few $1,000s might work for a few organizations. There's a number somewhere in between. It could be 1 million, could be less. But there's a number somewhere that that is worth the risk, and is going to, if it works, will pay off. If it doesn't work, will teach us enough that we know where to go next. And that's the culture that every organization needs right now, in trying to remain competitive with the kinds of machine learning capabilities we have today.
I agree. Okay. And then I guess from your point of view, then, where do C-level leaders often fall short in preparing their teams? And I guess how can they correct this?
Right now, I think they really mostly don't understand it well enough. They don't seek out knowledgeable folks in their organization. They don't ask, a professor from their alma mater, right? Where what about what does this stuff do? How does it work? Where are the benefits? Where are the costs? They don't. They make the mistake of believing the hype, and getting all wound around the axle in, I don't know, taking it to the Terminator level, right? And it's like, well, hold on, right? Before we fire everybody, let's make sure that we know what we're doing. Let's make sure that we're not taking unjustified risks based on silly assumptions. that are unprovable. We have to, and we don't have to have all the evidence in the world, but we do need to understand enough about it so that we can build capabilities that will actually enhance our business. And yes, it will reduce the number of jobs in certain career fields. Absolutely. It will, there are ways to do that, and it will happen. But I think there are many more opportunities to build up new capabilities that we've never thought of before. And that will require leadership. That will require folks to manage those systems, to understand what their outputs are. These machines are not yet self-aware. And going to just start doing whatever they feel like doing. The machines are going to remain with the capabilities that they have, and they're going to get sharper and sharper, better and better. But we also have to think about what is the cost versus value, of these capabilities that we're building, and how will they affect the organization? How does it affect our training? How can we have we talked to our whole team about how we're going to pursue AI, right? So a company, and just the company like I used to work at Gartner, and it's been a couple of years, so I could talk about this, that there's a lot of things that Gartner can benefit from by using Gen AI to extract information that used to take hours and hours or days and days of analyst time to dig out. That's a great use of AI. They can also use it to generate some initial text that the analysts then have to improve. But then throwing out all the analysts and expecting Gen AI to do the work for you is a bridge too far at this point, because there are too many judgment calls along the way that have to be made. There are even organizations in every just think just about every industry could benefit, but we're not going to fire all the radiologists. We're not going to fire all the healthcare specialists. We're not going to fire all the analysts at financial institutions and at companies like Gartner and McKinsey and others. We're not that's not going to happen. But there
Yeah.
will be losses. There will be job losses. There will be shifts. What those are, we're not quite sure yet. I'd say as an industry, and as leaders in this field, we can't really say yet where that's going and where the best benefits will be, because right now we're buried in hype, and we've got to take a breath and replace that hype with solid understanding of where value is delivered. And yes, we should be looking at cutting where we have spending that we don't need because we can automate something. That's the way businesses have gained productivity now for generations. Whether it goes back to the machine, the dawn of the industrial era through the information age to now, right? It's all about productivity and increasing the speed of our economies, improving the scale of the kinds of things we could do. And like I said, and I think as data leaders, we're at the cusp of some really cool stuff. So I don't think we're going to be out of business anytime soon, but I do think we have to really dig in and learn.
Okay. Brilliant, Joe. Well, yeah, that was a really great discussion. You shared a lot of great insight, knowledge, advice. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast.
It has been my pleasure, Ben, and I do truly hope if readers want to reach out to me through you, then listeners, I'm very happy to answer questions if they've got some thoughts. Feedback is welcome. As I said earlier, we all grow through feedback, both positive and negative. So I'm anxious to see that, and I do appreciate the time you've given me today and the thoughtfulness of your questions, Ben. And I've learned from you, and I hope I've contributed a little bit to the audience that's listening.
Most definitely. You've helped me. So it's great. And I'll share a link to your LinkedIn profile as well so people can reach out to you because, like I said, you've had a great career. Like I said, sharing is what's needed.
And it's what I do. So happy to help.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ben.